Welcome to another episode of Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and this is my husband and co-host, Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yellow! Welcome to the podcast where we try to inspire better work performance. Thanks for listening.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and today I have a guest with me, Joel Zeff. And he brings improv to audiences and organizations all over the world.
Sure. I'm going to the Bahamas tomorrow to speak.
That's right. I
forgot. So you can definitely call me international.
That's right. We're international Joel Zeff.
Yes.
And he wrote a book called Make the Right Choice. And he's going to help you find play and sort of connects up play with this idea of trust, vulnerability, change, culture, the whole mixed bag of ways that basically having people loosen up and enjoy themselves and see, and from an organizational standpoint, see possible leaders actually sort of let their hair down, actually bonds people together and helps them be more comfortable with both mistakes, but also change.
I like all that. That sounds good. I should put all that on my website.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, my keynotes are using improv and to have fun. And also what we want to do is talk about choices. That's why the book is called Make the Right Choice. We want to talk about the choices that we make as leaders, managers, as teammates, and how we create success and how we find success during change and disruption and how we become better leaders, and how we become better communicators. And so the book is called Make the Right Choice because we're always looking for the right choice.
Excellent.
I use improv as my tool to talk about the choices, and some of those choices are based around teamwork, leadership, change, culture, communication, innovation, all those big words that we love to throw around that are really important to our success and our happiness. And improv is just a great tool to play, like you mentioned. And when we play, we're authentic, we're our true selves. We kind of take away some of our barriers and some of our fears. And when we play, we're having fun. And what's important is the audience is engaged with the message. They're more open to the message. And more importantly, they're going to retain because, again, we're playing, we're having fun, we're laughing. And so in my presentations, whether it's a keynote or a workshop, we're playing these improv games, but it's just the tool to talk about these choices.
So the reason why I link it with building trust is because maybe you haven't thought about it this way, but there's like a fair amount of research that shows that leaders who are able to be vulnerable after they've established that they actually have expertise, so we don't think that they're a clown.
Yeah.
That way, if they can admit mistakes and take some risks and, be open about those kinds of things, that allows their employees to then be able to do that because there's like a reciprocity that happens and it communicates that it's a safe place.
Oh, I agree completely. And when sometimes I have like high level executives get in front of their team and play an improv game with me, the ROI on that is huge.
Right. Because the condition is you don't want to do that if you haven't established your expertise, and everybody's afraid of admitting failures or mistakes because they're afraid of eroding. But like improv is one of the ways where like you can be silly and screw up and laugh, and that doesn't actually erode like the perception of you in terms of expertise.
Yeah, what it's doing is, first of all, improv, you are going to make mistakes.
Yes.
It's built into it, and you can't.
And that's kind of the fun of it.
Right, exactly. You can't fear it. You have to embrace it, right? Improv wants us to embrace that change, embrace that we are going to make mistakes. Everything we say is not going to work. Because for those listening or watching, improv, there's no script, there's no rehearsal, there's no plan. Everything's happening in the moment right there. And so, of course, some choices are going to be better than others. And that's why I titled my book, Make the Right Choice. We're looking for the right choice, the best choice in improv, that magic moment. And when I have executives play these games in front of their team and they let their guard down and they have fun and they laugh, what their team sees, it humanizes them. They're
Yeah.
just like me. They like to laugh. They're silly. They have fun, and they are. They're not some. Sometimes we put these leaders in these, and we on these pedestals, and we look, and they're just like they're normal. They put their pants on one leg at a time, to use a cliche. And when you use improv, it equalizes everybody. We're all on the same page. We're all equal, and we're all having fun, and we're all playing. And when you see someone have fun, play, laugh at themselves,
Mhm.
you make that connection. It creates a bond that's very, very powerful.
How did you get into this?
When I moved to Dallas in 1991, long time ago.
Yes.
It's a different century, Cindy. So
I
long
know.
ago. Remember?
I was alive when that
Yeah,
was
there was no internet. There was no camera. There was no phones. There was camera, no camera phones. And so I was a newspaper journalist. And I moved to Dallas. And the first weekend, some friends took me to see an improv show. And I had seen Second City in Chicago, but a lot of that is scripted. And there's a little bit of improv, but mostly it's sketch.
Mm.
And so this was a true 100% improv show. And it was like the movies where the key character, something happens and the music goes, oh, it's a key moment in the protagonist's life. And it was literally like that. It was this moment. And if it was a movie and you saw in the camera pan and you would see my face, there would be like animated characters circling around, the music it'd be a spotlight. And they had a game and audience volunteer, and so I volunteered as an audience volunteer the first game, and I have a photo of that. And it was love. It was more than love. It was a calling. I was just drawn to it. And they said, we teach workshops. I'm like, where do I sign up? And I don't care how much it costs.
Wow.
And obviously, I'm a newspaper reporter. It's not like I have a huge budget. And so I took a couple workshops, and it was my oasis. It was my respite, because I was at a tough job. Not just my job being difficult, but the situation and what was happening, because the newspaper ended up closing 6 months after I joined, which is a whole nother story. And so I had this oasis, this respite once a week, where I came and took this workshop and learned improv. And it was magic. It was a connection, and I just fell in love. And fast forward a few years, and they had auditions. And I auditioned, and I was asked to join the troupe. We had our own theater in Dallas, this small little theater, and we drew a pretty good crowd. And we always talk about it being lightning in a bottle. This group of people that we all respected each other. We all loved performing with each other. Everybody had different strengths, and when we came together, it was a very special moment.
Yeah.
It was a great show. It was amazing. And that's how I started doing improv. And
Do y'all still do that?
the theater closed several years ago. And every once in a while we do get together and have like a old man comedy show where we just get together and sell out a theater and have some fun. Remember when we were young and doing improv? And someday we're going to have walkers, and like, let's do some improv. And one of my clients was Texas Instruments. I was working at a PR agency at this time. And they said, I know you do improv on the weekends. Can you do some of that improv with us?
Oh, wow.
We're having this executive retreat.
Okay.
And that's how it started. That's how the speaking career, like, oh, I could get paid for this? That's how it started. And they had fun. I had fun. That's when the light bulb started flickering about using improv in the corporate world to talk about leadership and teamwork and culture. At that time, it was just playing games and having fun. There was no message. And it just evolved over time.
And what do you think is your message?
Well, I know what my message is that I use improv, and we talk about some of the choices as far as teamwork. We talk about how we help each other be successful, which is a key message, how we create opportunity for each other, how important it is to be positive and supportive. Improv also teaches us how to embrace change, to be open and flexible to change, be prepared for change. We talk about leadership. We talk about staying in the game. being more present and in the moment. In communication, we talk about active listening and creating more detail. So there's a lot of there's a lot of messages depending on what part I'm going to peel back and focus on. But all these messages are about choice and controlling that choice and reacting.
Okay. I was listening to you and I was thinking that actually a lot of them are grounded also in trust.
Trust is absolutely a huge part because you're building confidence, and when you trust your partner that you're working with, and you're building on those messages.
It's like a trust fall without the crazy.
Without anybody, anybody falling.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. But you're on stage and you're in front of, 500, 1,000 people, and you're doing this improv game. So I'll bring audience volunteers to the stage. I give them a few minutes of instruction. We're going to play this game. And then I expect them to be successful. And I'm in the game with them.
Right.
So I am, I can do more. Or, if they're being a star, I'll pull back. I want them to be a star. But if they need a little help, they're a little tentative, I'm going to be there to support them and to create that environment. But we're constantly building trust and confidence. And you can see it in their body language, which is really cool. And one of my key messages is I give them opportunity and the audience gives them positive support. And when you put those two things together, it's amazing what we can accomplish. And you could see their confidence, and they're trusting me, they're trusting their other teammates. You could see it in their body language. And then they start doing more. And the audience laughs and applaud. And we get more positive support, and they do more, take more risks. It's amazing.
And now, are you teaching at a university?
No, but I should.
Okay.
Do you know somebody? No. It's funny. I was with my wife yesterday, and I said, I go, because my son's going off to college in the fall. And I said, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to teach a class.
Well, so when I went through, my MBA, most of my degrees, except for my undergrad, are all at UT Austin.
Yeah.
And so when I was going through at the time, they were doing a program called Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just for the MBAs. And one of the first things we did was like a half a day on improv.
Oh, that's awesome.
We were like new students coming in. So like the improv sort of just jump-started those relationships.
Yeah, it's an amazing tool for a lot of different ways to connect, to teach. It was originally meant as a teaching tool. So a woman named Viola Spolin created improv in the 1930s, early 40s at NYU to teach her students.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. And she wrote a book called Improv for the Theater, and that's where all improv started. And so everybody can trace their tree, their improv tree, back to Viola.
She's the grandmother.
She is.
Yeah.
She is the original, and so
she's the original OG.
Yeah, she is. She's the OG improv. But she created improv to teach her students because, again, she believed in play, and you take away some of your barriers, some of your obstacles, some of your fears, and you're more authentic. You're your true self, and there isn't so much demand when you're playing, and so it's easier to learn, easier to teach, and that was her concept.
I think you're also given permission to be goofy, which is helpful.
For sure. Permission to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Permission to experiment, for sure. Because these were acting. She was an acting teacher. She was a theater teacher. And that's why her book, Improv for the Theater. And then everybody has used improv in different ways, but it comes all back to education. And that's how I use improv. And everybody uses improv in their own way. And you can manipulate the games. You can mix and match. You can take this part of this game, this part of this game. And I've done that to how I use the improv game. So it fits with what I'm communicating and how I'm connecting with the audience and what I'm using the games for. But in the end, I want people to have fun. I want them to laugh. And if that's all they get out of my hour keynote, I'm ecstatic. There's no better way to spend an hour than through fun and laughter. But we're going to talk about these really important choices. And I hope these choices will help them as they grow as leaders, as teammates, as they think about how to create this work culture, how they manage teams. And so I think there's a lot of applications.
What are some ways that leaders unintentionally erode trust?
That, I think, is not giving positive support. I think that's really important. It fuels us. And if leaders don't give their team that appreciation, that positive support, it's something's missing and you're not happy. And I think the two things we need most is opportunity and positive support, which we mentioned.
Mhm.
And if leaders don't give that opportunity, don't give that positive support, how can we be fulfilled and happy? And eventually we're going to turn into a bye-bye person because we don't trust, we don't have confidence, we don't care. And we all know bye-bye people. Bye-bye people could care less. We meet them all the time. They walk among us. They don't care about the goal, the mission, the customer. Bye-bye.
Well, they're there for the paycheck.
Right. And they're not being fulfilled.
Right.
And eventually those bye-bye people are going to leave. They're going to go work someplace else. And then what do you have to do? Now I've got to replace that person. So I'm using resources and time to hire somebody new, to train them, get them up to speed, all the while that's affecting the rest of my team. Why didn't I give the opportunity and positive support to the person that was already there? And eventually it's just going to keep cycling. You're like, well, we can't keep anybody because you as a leader aren't giving what they need the most, opportunity and positive support. And when was the last time as a leader you asked your team? And this has nothing to do, I'm not saying you have to be overbearing, you have to be a helicopter manager, but it's a simple question. What's going to make you happy here? And you're going to be surprised by the answer. It's not going to be more money. We all want more money. That's a given. But that happiness only lasts to the next paycheck. And then you realize
And then readjust up.
You're not fulfilled. So do I want a different role? Do I want more training? Do I want a mentor? Do I want to go to a conference? There's lots of different opportunities. But if you ask your team members to really be honest with themselves, you're going to be, one, be surprised by the answer. And then two, I think you're going to be surprised how easy it is to give them that opportunity. And then what do you get back in return? You get a passionate, energized team member.
Hello, musers. Now it's time for commercial break. Hey everyone, exciting news. I am here to unveil, ta-da, the Uncertainty Playbook. Written by Jeffrey Tumlin and Cindi Baldi, it's 14 strategies for work success in a chaotic world. We know that most people aren't very good with uncertainty, and so we combed through the research and ran some experiments in our own work and came up with these 14 strategies that we think could be really helpful for helping you all survive uncertainty and coming out on top. If you're interested in buying the book, it's available on our websites, managementmuse.com and ondemandleadership.com. You can get 20% off if you use the promo code Playbook20. That will get you 20% off and free shipping. So stop on by, and we're wishing you some good reading. So what inspired you to write the book?
Well, the publisher called me and said, do you have a book? And I said, no. And they said, you should.
Which publisher?
Wiley.
Oh, okay.
I highly recommend, if you're writing a book, to have the publisher just call you.
Well, yeah, that is nice.
It's a lot easier.
How did they find you?
So the original editor, she said she was researching somebody else, came across my name, started researching me, realized I didn't have a book, and then that's how it started. And for some reason, and she said, why don't you have a book? And I said, this is a true story. I said, well, I was waiting for you to call me. And they still
shouldn't have asked the improv guy for that.
And they still wanted to work with me, which was weird. So I was very lucky and very fortunate. And then this book, so I had in 2023, end of 2023, I had a client who wanted to purchase the first book. They wanted to purchase a big
order.
Yeah. And I said, well, over COVID, I don't know if the book is still in print. I'd have to make a call. And she said, yeah, could you do that? That'd be great. And I'm like, okay. And I put it on my list and I didn't do anything. And I wrote about this in the book, by the way. And I didn't do anything. I just left it there. And then this client She's one of those people that gets things done.
So she called you back.
So she called me back. And I'm like, "Hi."
It's an art that doesn't happen very often.
I know. So the universe demanded that this book be written and done because the universe was using the invisible hand and making this happen. Because she's like, we want whatever it was, 150 copies. And so I called the publisher and she said, yeah, we could print for that. Do you need other copies for your upcoming events? I go, yeah, I need so many copies. And they said, well, what about doing another book, or we can do a second edition of the original book and you would just write a bunch of new chapters. I go, okay. So I rewrote every chapter and then added 5 chapters. And then we did a new cover, new subhead. So it's really a new book.
So what changed between the two?
Just my own experience.
Okay.
Right? Just years of speaking and meeting so many different leaders, seeing what they do, and then being exposed to all these other work cultures. And then you just have all these stories. It just evolved just by my own presence and just being a part, speaking and meeting all these awesome people and learning from all these awesome people. And then just putting those stories and those thoughts into the book. And I wanted the book still to be fun and engaging, but I also wanted it to, I wanted the book to talk about all these different choices that improv taught me and that I share in my keynotes. And so, we have a couple chapters about change, teamwork, leadership, communication, and innovation, and positive support and opportunity, all the things that we've been talking about. And then I wanted to have lots of ideas, because you go to all these different events, you meet all these different cultures, and here's an idea how they appreciate their team members. And here's an idea what they do to connect to their team, and I wanted to include a lot of those ideas. And so at the end of each chapter, I had these quick ideas, things that you could do with your team or.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
That's handy.
And some people that you could enact and take away. But I wanted people to also have fun. I didn't want it to be a textbook or this business book that, is just a slog to get through. I want it to be fun. I want people to giggle, tell some fun stories, engage, and then talk about these great messages.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What's some of your favorite stories? Like, give me a favorite story from your experience.
My favorite. I got lots of favorite stories. One of them is I include in the book about staying in the game and being present. Is my favorite introduction, and his name was Bob, and Bob was giving my introduction in front of like 400 or 500 people. The problem was Bob was reading the introduction of the speaker the day before.
Oh no, I'm feeling better about myself.
Yeah, and that person's name was Scotty, and Scotty was a magician, and so he's reading this introduction about Scotty, and
it's going to be magical.
Yeah, well trapped. He opened for the Zach Brown band. I mean, it was just a long introduction, and I was trying. The executive director, my client, was sitting in the front row, and I was standing on the side of the ballroom, and I was trying to get his attention, and I was pointing to Bob, and I was kind of going, but the executive director wasn't listening. He's got a million things going on, right? Because he's trying to get this event going. And the audience isn't, either they didn't attend Scotty the Magician's event the day before, or they're like, oh, Scotty's back.
Yeah.
No one is putting 2 and 2 together except for me. And so I noticed my mic was live. It was on, which usually it's not. Usually they don't turn it on until you get on stage. And I noticed it was hot. And I go, kind of voice of God, I go, Bob. And Bob, very startled, his eyes got really big. He just stopped reading. I go, Bob. I go, you're doing an awesome job. One quick note. You are reading the introduction for Scotty, who was yesterday's speaker. I'm Joel, today's speaker. Any chance you could read my introduction? And the audience just busts out laughing. The executive director jumps out like a rocket and just and at the lectern, there's all these, and you see these papers just flying. because he's finally cluing in that he's gave the wrong introduction to Bob. Bob's just standing there kind of like, what is going on?
I was just given the sheet. I'm just reading here.
And I am loving every second of this. And I'm just keep on going, right? As the executive director, I'm way off to the side, voice of God. And I'm like, Bob, I could try to do magic. I don't think it's going to be good. And so then I get up there and I use Bob in my presentation. I talked about not giving up and staying in the game and being more present, and that we do make mistakes. We have to embrace them. So it really fit perfectly.
The whole thing did, because basically you forced Bob to improvise.
If this could happen every time,
poor Bob,
I would absolutely love it. I love these moments where something happens and then I'm improvising, and it's this unique, special moment for the audience too. This is never going to happen again, which creates a magical moment. I love these moments more than anything. And obviously,
the spontaneity of it.
And the executive director was apologizing. I'm like, you do not need to apologize. This is one of my all-time favorite moments in 2,500 events. I love when something like this happens. And I was just profusely, making sure that the audience was applauding Bob and giving him positive support. And I said, Bob, when I got on stage, I said, I want you to know one thing. It's not your fault. It's his fault. And I pointed to the executive director. And it was just a great moment. And I actually, thinking back now, I should have just let Bob do the introduction, jumped on stage, and just did the worst magic ever. Like finger behind the back and, until the audience just turned on me.
No, that sounds like a bad idea.
No, I think it would have been fun because it's never going to happen again. I included that in the book. That's one. I have just give me a category and I could give you a story.
Give me one, like you talk about change. Mm-hmm. Give me a story around change.
When I play improv games, and I like to do different games, and I think we talked about in the book. I think I talked about. I was pointing out one of the games, and an executive was a ballerina. He had to be a ballerina on stage. Oh. Right, and afterwards, someone said, and this happens all the time. Like, I can't believe that he did that on stage. And I said, well, we gave them the opportunity and gave them the positive support. And what happened was he embraced that moment and he was flexible. He didn't know that I was going to ask him to be a ballerina. So he had to be really open and flexible to that change. And every person that comes on stage with me, there's constant change and disruption. They don't know what game I'm going to play, what their role is going to be, what's going to happen once the game starts with their teammates.
Do you think that works to your advantage?
Oh, for sure. Because they are, one of the key messages is that they're prepared for change. Mm-hmm. And what does that do? It sets their tone and their attitude. Nobody gets frustrated. Nobody gets impatient. Nobody's negative. Nobody's stressed. Because from the moment they were sitting in the audience and they joined me on stage, they made a choice. I'm prepared for change. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't even know what game he's going to make me play, but I'm prepared. And so you have a better attitude. You have a great approach, a tone, and that sets you on a course for success. And now you're more open and flexible to change. Somebody says something, you're going to be open and flexible. One of the games I play is called Know It All. And I have 3 people that sit in chairs. The audience asks them questions. Why is the sky blue, for example? And then they have to answer that question one word at a time.
Oh, so they're building on each other.
Right. They're a 3-headed person. I have no idea what that person's going to say or that person's going to say. And so they have to be very open and flexible to the word that's coming at them. And one of the messages, I say, what tripped you up? And sometimes they say, well, I tried to anticipate what word they were going to say.
I think I would do that too.
Yeah. And they're never going to say the word that you're anticipating. And then you get frustrated that they didn't say the word that you thought they would say. And now you're creating this tension. You have to be more open and flexible. And if it's free and it relaxes you, if you let it, and if you're present in the moment, then you let your mind and you give your mind confidence and you let your mind work. And it's pretty amazing. And it's a fascinating game. And sometimes I play the game with those three people. Sometimes I'll have everybody pair up and then have a conversation one word at a time. Find another pair, and so have a conversation. And then now my success is built on 4 people. And it's pretty cool to see when everyone's open and flexible to that change and prepared for change. And they're listening, which is a big part of finding success during change.
I think that might actually be, I think there are many things that people struggle with change inside organizations, but I think we really don't like to be knocked out of just being able to knock things out on our list.
Yeah.
And the change does mean we have to actually stop, pay attention, listen to what somebody else is doing or needs, or
right.
And so that is, I think, a big obstacle.
Well, it's constant. Like I was talking to a client the other day and I said, well, change is one of my big choices. One of the things I talk about. And he said, well, I don't know if that's important to us. We don't have any organizational change coming up. And I go,
we have change all the time.
Yeah, every single day is change. I'm not saying we're,
transforming into a butterfly,
but somebody says something, somebody does something, somebody makes a mistake, something doesn't show up on time, something breaks, economy, new regulations, competition.
Human beings being human beings.
We deal with change every moment. And what improv teaches us is to embrace that, not to be afraid of it, and to be confident in yourself, in your abilities, not be afraid to make a mistake. We don't want to make mistakes, but we want to minimize them. We want to learn from them. But if we're afraid, then we will never take a risk. We'll never grow. And we'll be in our little comfort zone and not get out of it. And then eventually life will pass us by and we're like, oh, we're still doing the same thing we've been doing for 10 years.
Right. And it's now it's amazing how fast it moves.
Right.
And now it's 10 years old and it's not all that fresh.
And improv is just constant change and disruption. And it's embracing it. It's being open and flexible. It's being prepared for it. It's being confident during change and disruption. And I think all these messages are really positive and supportive in sometimes very trying times. And I think we need that as an anchor, that positivity and that support. If we're not appreciated, that change and disruption gets very difficult. And then we start building stress and we're getting frustrated because we don't have that anchor. We don't have that support.
How can you, as a manager or a leader, how can you sort of foster these relationships, but remain productive, balance the productivity needs, balance like sort of this idea of, yes, I need to take care of people, but I also shouldn't be overly involved, sort of keeping a balance between the two worlds.
We're not what you're saying. We certainly don't want you to micromanage.
Sure.
Right. I think that's what you're talking about. But I like to keep things simple. I like my audiences, and we talk about to think about these things in very simple terms and make these choices very simple. And I think it comes down to creating opportunity and positive support. And I think that's the foundation for that success with our teams. And as a leader, as a manager, first giving that positive support. And in my keynotes, I say, look, I know you're very busy. We're all very busy people. Sometimes life goes very fast and we forget to give that appreciation. We forget to give that positive support. I get it. So think about each person you had contact with that day on your way home from work, however you get home from work. Use that time to think about all these connections. Did you give the people that deserved it positive support? Did you appreciate them? You say, thank you. You did an awesome job. Thanks for listening to me. Thanks for the support. Thanks for that encouragement. Thanks for that advice, whatever. And you go, I got really busy today. I forgot. Now you have this list. Tomorrow, give them that positive support. Say thank you. Text them, email, see them in the hall, mail a letter. I don't care. Call them up. They want to hear it. It's a gift. And it takes no money.
Praise is a gift.
Yeah. I think it's the best gift you can give anybody. Doesn't take any money, barely takes any time. You don't have to put a PowerPoint presentation together. You just have to say thank you and I appreciate you. And it fuels us. And, there on no job application does it say you have to have passion for this job. You have to be a passionate engineer. You have to be a passionate IT professional. You have to be passionate HR. No, it doesn't say that on the job application. There's no requirement. You're not contractually obligated to be passionate. I'd love for you to be passionate. That'd be awesome. It's my job as a leader and a manager for you to be passionate. And all I need to do is to create ownership and responsibility. When I give that team member ownership and responsibility, when you own something, when it's your responsibility, you start to care because you have ownership, right? You care about it. And once you start caring about something, the next step is you have passion. And that ownership responsibility part, that's where that positive support comes in. Not just giving that ownership, but giving that positive support and that appreciation. And I think that creates.
Well, the appreciation is a little bit of feedback along the way while you're trying to do something.
Right.
Which that it is also a gift.
Yeah.
But it serves also the function of feedback that is almost like micro goals.
Yeah.
That maybe people aren't setting for themselves.
And we want to be appreciated.
We do.
Not just by a paycheck.
Yeah.
Even at your entry level first job out of school. I mean, I remember my first job was a movie theater.
Oh, well, that's where I grew up.
In a movie theater?
Yep, my parents they still owned a drive-in, and that's really where I grew up. But also we had an indoor.
That sounds a lot cooler than my second run movie theater. But I remember the first 4 movies when I started. No, that's
yeah, I'd love to hear.
The first 4 movies that I started was Karate Kid, the original.
I remember when that came out.
And this was week 50. When movies stayed in the theater for.
Well, Karate Kid had the legs.
Yes, but so we were like a second run theater, and so they didn't think it was going to be a big hit, so that's why. And so Karate Kid, which is one of the greatest movies ever, was that Greystroke Legend of Tarzan. Not a huge hit.
No.
Not a huge hit. Greystroke Legend of Tarzan.
Was that?
That was Baudelaire.
Okay.
Yeah. And a movie called Breakin' 2.
I remember Breakin' 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
Mm-hmm. I remember that movie.
Yeah. So for the kids, they made a movie about breakdancing, and this was its sequel.
Yes, it was good enough.
Yeah, that they made a sequel. Yeah,
despite the Australian woman who joined the Olympics. And
one of my great regrets is not taking the movie poster of Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo, because I remember there was a stack of movie posters.
Joel, it's possible it's in my mother's attic.
It's got value, and I remember they were like, "Oh, you can take whatever movie posters you want."
Yeah, that's right. We once we were done playing them.
Yeah, and there were stacks of even movies that we never even had at the movie theater, and I didn't take them, and it was one of my great regrets. And then the 4th movie was a movie called Spring Break, which was just I hope you don't remember that movie.
I remember a lot of bad movies.
Yeah, I hope you don't remember this movie. You can imagine what's happening in the movie called Spring Break. Those are the 4 movies. And I learned very early on, I talk about this in my book too, and I'm making nothing. I think when I tell the story, I say I made $2.85 an hour. Sounds
right.
I don't even think that was minimum wage. I think somehow they were able to pay us below minimum wage. I don't know how they got around it.
91-ish.
This is 80. This is early 80s.
I mean, that might have been minimum wage.
Well, we could do some research.
Yeah, we could.
But I'm cleaning up people's trash and cleaning the hot dog machine for $2.85 an hour. You better figure out how to have fun.
Like the boiled hot dogs?
Yeah, you better figure out how to have fun. And it really taught me that it was my choice.
Yes.
It was my choice. Do I have the choice that I've got to clean that movie theater? No, it's my job. But I have the choice
to do it in a way that was fun. Yeah.
And have fun with the people around me. And it taught me a lot, actually.
Federal minimum wage in 1985, $3.35.
Yeah. I do, because in 1985 I was working for the Gap. This would have been 1983.
I just looked. It also said
Yeah.
something about 1981 that it hadn't changed since 1981. So
I believe
you were being underpaid.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I have a lawsuit.
I treble damages.
Yeah, I don't know what the statute of limitations is, but we could do some research.
I feel like it's over.
Yeah, but
That extra $1.
yeah, but I did get free movies.
Yeah.
And we could eat
All the popcorn you can stand.
all the hot dogs, nachos, candy. The other story I talked about in my book is in the summer, they would have kids movies like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh,
And-
loved that movie.
Really?
Loved that
When's
movie.
the last time you saw Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
I mean, forever ago.
Yeah, it's-
But Dick Van Dyke.
Yes, Dick Van Dyke in a terrible Cockney accent, I believe, right?
I think you might be right.
It's
Yeah.
brutal. That movie is also ridiculously long for a kid's movie. There's an intermission.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so you would sell these kids this thing where they go to a movie a week in the afternoon and they got a popcorn and candy and a Coke, and so it's literally just a movie theater full of kids. And so one of the people that worked there had to be what they called Cowboy Bob, and Cowboy Bob was basically the sheriff of the movie theater. So kid has a problem, spilled his Coke, needs a refill, somebody's kicking the back of his
the
chair,
chairs.
somebody can't, and there was no parents. They would literally, this is 19 whatever.
Yeah, they used to get dropped off.
Drop them off with some change in their pocket for some candy, and all ages. And so
I feel like that should come back.
yeah, I don't know. I don't think it should. So Cowboy Bob had a vest, a hat, had like a badge. And so, so yeah, it was one of the great moments in my life for sure. And so you learn a lot about
Unexpected.
choices and happiness and embracing change by being Cowboy Bob for $2.85 an hour. But obviously, I'm talking about it now 40 plus years later. So
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value there. Like, like I said, I grew up in a snack bar and at the drive-in,
Yeah.
mostly, predominantly at the drive-in.
Yeah.
And
the Grease song is happening right
oh,
now.
I remember
as you
Grease
say
playing.
at the drive-in, all of a sudden
Yeah,
the song is playing.
I remember when that played there.
Yeah.
And like one of the most significant lessons I think I learned was realizing that some days everybody would be in the same mood. So like sometimes everybody would come in and they'd just be ecstatic. Sometimes they come in and everybody would be grumpy. And it was the first time I realized how contagious emotions were. And then the scientist in me came out. Then I was like, okay, so what can I do to try to reset these people?
Right.
And it was just a fun game.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like you can learn like the most
You do.
significant lessons
Maybe. Yeah.
if you're putting the effort into it.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't know you're learning, right? You don't realize that this is a lesson until you reflect back. But I think that's important to reflect. Every job, you hopefully will take something, even if it's a terrible job, you will take
And
something.
even if you
from it.
learn that it matters that you fit with an organization.
Yeah.
Like, or even if you learn what not to be by a terrible manager.
Right.
There's definitely always something.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to my daughter who's graduating college from UT Austin.
Awesome.
So, yeah, there you go.
Longhorn.
And my wife's also a Longhorn.
All right.
So we have this connection. By the way, her brother, sister, mom, and dad also all Longhorns.
Oh, awesome. I'm the first Longhorn in my family, although I married
You married
a
in.
Longhorn.
Yeah, I've got it 24/7 all around me. So my daughter's graduating UT, and we had just yesterday, I was talking to her about jobs, and I said, how obviously as a dad, very proud of her. But I was talking about, you're gonna work someplace, and I said, do not put up with bad managers. But I did not say bad managers. I used a different word that we can't use on the podcast. I said, don't work for bad managers. Use a different word. I said, life's too short, and you have to value yourself. Right.
And it's the number one reason why people leave.
Yeah.
Or I think it's the number one reason why people leave organizations is like they have a problem with their manager.
Yeah. And don't be afraid. I don't be afraid to leave, because why stay there and not be happy and fulfilled in your job, right? And sometimes you don't know. We literally just had this conversation yesterday. And sometimes you get hired and you don't realize that you're going to work for a bad manager until you're in the process.
Yeah, you sometimes don't know until you're knee deep.
Right. But you need to understand and then start thinking about an exit strategy because your happiness is important.
And I think that, because we think about this a lot, I think that one of the reasons why people stay in a job like that is, like, we know that people have a tendency to take a bad outcome over the potential of a positive outcome because they don't want to deal with uncertainty.
Right.
And so you somehow sort of just fell in love with a bit of chaos and uncertainty.
Right.
And you help other people figure out how to be okay with it with improv tools.
Right.
But most people, they remember how grueling it was and how vulnerable you feel when you're on the job market.
Yeah.
And that is very binding to your current job.
Yeah.
In a way it shouldn't be, but it is.
And I hope not just through the book, but my keynotes, podcasts, I hope I inspire people and to think about them because I want people to be happy and fulfilled in what they do. I'm very lucky that I figured out what I love.
Yeah, it hit you like a lightning bolt.
But I also had to navigate that.
Right.
I fell in love with improv, but at the time I was sitting in the audience.
Yes.
From that moment to the moment of today was a journey.
Right.
And I never planned on that journey. I never thought that was going to be my path. But when you believe in something, when you love something and you're passionate about it, you're going to find ways to make it work. And success will find that passion. When I speak to students, one of the first things I always say is, what do you love? What would you do for free? You don't care about getting paid. What would you love to do? What industry? What your hobbies? And I promise you, there's a multi-billion-dollar business in that industry. And you got to figure out how to get your love into that industry. And if there's not an industry around something that you love, then you create it, right? I never knew that there were speakers, and there certainly weren't people when I started doing improv. And to this day, there's not people that do it like I do in a keynote. It was just, I want to share my love of improv. I want to share what improv gave me, and I want to make people laugh. And as my wife says, you only want to do two things. You want to make people laugh, and you want to tell people what you think. And somehow you figured out how to have a career around that. And I'm like, I know, but I didn't mean to. It just, I loved it. I was passionate about it, and I followed what I loved to do. And when I first started, I spoke for free all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care about getting paid because I loved it. And to this day, I tell my clients all the time, the keynote on stage, that's free. I'm not charging you for that. I love that. I would do that for free every day. What I charge is to travel, to be away from my family, to do conference calls, and accounting, and contracting. That's all that stuff is what I charge for. To fly on a plane, sit next to somebody who gets me sick.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I'm charging for. The time on stage, that's free. But to be away from my family, that's what I'm charging for. And because I love what I do, and I'm very fortunate, but I've always, wherever I've worked, I've wanted to love what I do, right? I wanted to be passionate about working at the movie theater, making nothing. But that was my job, and I was passionate about it. I worked at the Gap. I was really passionate about it. I can tell you all about unwashed Levi's. People don't remember, but they used to sell Levi's at the Gap. Unwashed denim.
I remember.
And here's a lot of people, I'm going to throw down some big knowledge on this podcast. Unwashed denim shrinks 1 inch in the waist and 3 inches in length.
That I did not know.
Yeah. So to try to figure out your size is a lot of math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And usually it didn't work out very well. So that's why the Gap had their return policy at that. It's like, we'll just take anything back. And so, yeah, that's from the 80s. But, you know, when I was a newspaper reporter, when I worked in PR and advertising, and now as a speaker, I think no matter where you are in your journey, your career path, you should love what you do and you should be passionate about it. Might not be your job forever, might not be your career forever, but it's part of your journey, and you owe it to yourself to be passionate about what you do. And I think that's when we're happy and fulfilled.
Do you have any advice on how to find your passion for people who maybe in the instrumental phase, right? Like they're not actually where they want to be for a career, but they have these other jobs like the movie theater,
Right.
where, you know, they know it's not going to be a lifelong career.
Right. I think you have to think about what you are truly doing. If you say, and as again, we're talking about the movie theater, so let's reflect on that. So when I worked at the movie theater, right, why was I having fun and happy? Because I truly believed, you know, that I had to be happy in everything that I did, right? I had to have this energy or I don't want to do it. And so when you think about right now, think about your job. When I speak to somebody in hospitality, a group of hospitality, or I speak to a group of nurses, or I speak to a group in property management, I say, what do you do? You know, property management. So I manage a multifamily community. What do you really do? Let's really detail that. You're giving somebody a place to live, to make memories, to have a home. That's what you really do. If you just say, I manage a multifamily community,
yeah, I think that's very similar to what I did. Like somewhere along the line, one of the reasons why the experiment on being able to reset people emotionally was important to me.
Yeah.
Beyond just it being a fun game.
Right.
Was because like we were a fairly unique event that people took their families to, and we were part of their summer memories. And I thought that's important.
Yeah.
Like if you really want to have really good summer memories with your family.
Yeah. You gave some awesome memories, and you can drill that down to any job. What are you really giving something? Think about that. And then you go, wow, that is important. That is crucial. And it's easier for some, you know, as a nurse, pretty easy to figure out.
They got that one tied up.
Pretty easy to figure out how you're, you know, literally an angel and a hero.
But, you know, like dietary, right? Like in hospitals, because we're in a lot of hospitals, like, you know, like you are actually a key part of somebody's experience in the hospital while they're getting better, not just from like the food standpoint, but just from the standpoint that like the lack of good food isn't driving them crazy while they're stuck here.
Well, you're making them healthy. My wife's a dietitian, so you're making them healthier too. And even we think about the leadership at a hospital. I said, what do you do? Well, I manage, you know, this team.
Radiology.
Whatever. Yeah. I said, well, okay, if that's what you think you do, but that's not what you really do. You are part of the process of
discovering
helping people discuss, you know, be healthy, survive, overcome. There are so many amazing things that happen because of what you're doing. So I think we have to think about that in ways that when we look at things from a different perspective, I think that gives us that ability and realization of why we're doing it and gives us purpose. And I think purpose helps us create that happiness and passion.
Thank you, Joel. Thanks for joining us today on the Management Muse, and it's been our pleasure. I've enjoyed talking. We've had some improv going on.
Yeah, I had a great time. We went on a couple of tangents that I weren't expecting, and I loved it. We got to really kind of go back into some of my history. And I tell you what, we talked about my book, Make the Right Choice, Lead with Passion, Elevate Your Team, Unleash the Fun at Work, available at
Wiley.
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you buy your books. I would love to send a free chapter to all your listeners and readers.
Excellent.
Just go to my website, which is just my name, joelzeff.com, and sign up for an email. mention the podcast, and I will send you a chapter about change because we talk about change a lot.
Excellent. That's awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
All right.
Everybody loves a freebie.
Everybody loves a preview. All right, Joel. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you the next time on Management Muse. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Management Muse. We are a podcast/YouTube channel that we hope is entertaining and educational. If you are on YouTube, we would appreciate you subscribing and maybe leaving a comment and a like. If you are on any of the podcasts listening to this, we would appreciate stars, following, comments, all the good stuff. We want to say thank you to Christina, Sarah, and Rebecca, and then, of course, everybody at Design at Work. And then just as a last-minute reminder, we also want to mention that we are management and communication professionals working in the field, but also have degrees that back us in science. All that being said, we are talking in generalities on this podcast. We do not actually know your particular situation. So proceed with common sense and maybe a little bit of experimentation on your end. And we hope that you make the world a more beautiful place by making work a more enjoyable place. See you next time on Management Muse.